The sea is terrifying. It's big, monstrously so, it's also hard to explore, and we as humans have piled as much mythology into there as we have microplastics and waste. It makes sense that the cosmic and oceanic have become seabedfellows, even if you want to ignore the Shadow over Innsmouth, the Call of Cthulhu, and countless other sea-based works. The unknowable is terrifying, and the relationship between humans and the ocean is much like our relationship to the stars above. We can know it on a technical, scientific level, and yet it still has this ability to make our stomachs lurch. Its vastness makes us shrink in contrast. Yet games have sometimes struggled with the cosmic, because where books abstract horrors behind our imaginations, the intimate and often first-person lens of video games means we sort of have to see what's going on. There's only so much time you can watch projected finger puppets on the cave wall before you get tired and peek at the source behind it. Showing that source can be the undoing of a game that doesn't have the guts to do it right, and even those that ruin the tension can give just enough to burn some sort of image into your brain. I played the opening hours of Beneath, an upcoming Lovecraftian horror game, and unfortunately, I was never entranced by the images it tried to burn onto the wall. Here's why. First, I'd like to put a big caveat here. I played it early, but this is still a game that is actively in development. I was given a code to test the first few hours, but I anticipate it will change a bit before the game's launch on October 27th, just a few weeks from now. That's naturally a part of how you have to take this video. I've tried to soften some of how I express what I'm saying because, well, A, it's not me talking to a buddy, and B, because the version I've played won't be the one you potentially play on launch. I felt cautiously optimistic about Beneath going into the first couple of hours and felt more or less completely turned off it by the end. I don't know how the game comes together, both in the weeks coming up to launch and the story beats, so hold some judgment, but this is just how I felt after I've played it. After getting to the ocean floor and reaching an old German submarine, you get a distress call from above. Your ship has been attacked, you have lost 20 minutes worth of time, and you are being manipulated and pulled by some archaic oceanic entity. For the most part, the clash between whatever you deem your reality to be and the all-knowing Lovecraftian god that's worming its way into your skull happens inorganically and through fairly jarring cuts and trickery. It tells you it's a Lovecraftian game with this deep cosmic horror. Just look at the imagery, and yet I got in and played a relatively generic zombie game whose biggest scare was poorly mixed sound cues. The audio jumps wildly, with gunshots and talking being far less loud than just random bits of metal falling from the ceiling. Assuming this is adjusted, I still never felt sucked into this game's atmosphere. There are many reasons for this. Once you get up into your ship and you witness the carnage that has befallen your crew, your goal is to get your daughter and get out. Bodies are strewn on the floor, blood hanging over doorways and down corridors, windows smashed. Then you run into an officer, and what returns is stiff animations, awkward voice acting, and strange writing. In stills, this game doesn't look bad, but in motion it's floaty and nothing quite feels right. I would like to clarify what I think the devs are going for with Beneath. I don't think it's intended to be a hyper-realistic survival horror game. I think the intent is to harken back to classic horror adjacent shooters like Fear, or even more classic shooters like Half-Life, and I do think that goal is admirable. However, goodwill alone couldn't get me to enjoy what I played here. An important part of any shooter is the guns, and Beneath certainly has guns, I suppose. They shoot like guns do, and you find ammo as you would expect. But everything else feels stilted, unwieldy, and just plain unfun. The mass of zombies and guards you will be shooting through in the opening hours is visually uninteresting, mechanically unsatisfying, and just plain awkward. The same is true of the guards, and AI is equally awful. You initially start out with just a pistol, and add to this by finding a submachine gun, then a shotgun. For the most part, you can stand or crouch in a specific area and just wait for enemies to arrive in your sights. This is true of the zombies, true of guards, and even true of the one boss I came across. Guards drop a lot of ammo, and shooting mostly feels just okay, so within an hour or so it all felt more like an inconvenience to get to the next part and not in itself actually fun. Clicking that trigger doesn't feel uncomfortable, but everything floats. There's little impact to bullets, and this means that despite enemies going down in just a few shots, they almost don't go down quickly enough. It often feels like just shooting at a target until the game tells me I can keep walking. Beneath tells you to take your time and plan out enemy encounters near the start, and then puts a single door in front of you with 2 enemies and tells you to fight your way through. Beneath often takes or just admires the aesthetics of other games, but actually does little to actually emulate them. There's something admirable and a little charming about aping a game, but Beneath often feels like it gestures at what it wants to be and doesn't actually put it in front of you. Ironically, for a game reliant on a genre of horror that's all telling and not showing, the game's biggest weakness is that it does this in every part other than the scares. And you do get to see the entities it's gesturing at in jump scares and some enemies and sections, but not in entire areas, and never to a point where you can actually stop and take it in. The game has a very blink and you'll miss it approach to the parts it wants to shake you with, and that would work if the game wrapped around these elements actually gripped me, but it didn't. It felt jarring and rather alienating. Part of this is down to the mechanics of the game, but the other part is down to the story. Stiff animations and strange character models matter little if the heart at the core of the narrative can affect you, but Beneath's portrayal of our main character, his relationship to his daughter, and the mysterious voice on the radio guiding them along adds nothing to the tone, to the conjured vibe of the crawl through ships and stations. Obviously we have to give a little bit of charitability to where this story can go, but the start is a bit generic and doesn't really have any likable elements to make up for it. My first few hours with Beneath felt very copy and paste. There's a sense of deja vu to many of the game's environments and rooms, and the fact that you only really collect ammo and upgrade materials means exploration is rarely encouraged. This is made even worse by the fact that I never actually needed to look out for ammo. On the standard difficulty, resources are abundant. Of the 10 or so posters that are scattered throughout rooms, I think there's a possibility that a few of them are AI. I can't verify this as such, and no disclaimer exists in the Steam storefront, as is Valve's policy, but I think this signals something to me. The brazenness of just having it out in the open and slapped across a handful of similar environments the whole way through the opening hours, alongside the other parts of this game I've talked about so far, signal to me a lack of care. That's not to say no care exists for any part of this game, as I do believe the love for classic shooters is there, but guns feeling boring and indistinct, enemy design and AI being one note and dull, the story failing to sink its hooks into me, the Lovecraftian elements not cohesively balancing with the rest of the game or even tonally feeling succinct. These came together to conjure an atmosphere, one that made me a little sick of the game way before the end of the handful of hours I actually played. The thing about all of this is that most of what I'm describing I could look past to some imagined future where the game pulls its head above water and starts swimming, but this game now launches in a few weeks, and with every air bubble that hits the surface, it seems less and less likely it can break that surface tension. Beneath is at a sink or swim moment, and I don't know if it's got the energy to keep kicking its legs. Thank you for watching my video on Beneath. This was a tough one in a lot of ways. I originally intended to get something out a little before now, and then the release date changed, and that kind of swapped how I looked at this game. I think ultimately I just didn't like it very much, and I could talk a little more about that, but I also think it's only the opening hours, and I just really want to put that across. I'm hoping that this doesn't come across as too cynical in any way, because it's just how I felt when playing it, and obviously experiences will differ. There is a Steam Next Fest demo available right now, but it's not the same demo I played. Mine was a good bit more extended and had most of the build of the game in it right now. So there are differences, but you can play the game for yourself and see how you feel about it. I think I'll keep an eye on this one coming up to launch, but right now I don't see a single thing that I felt was likable basically in the entire game. The whole way I was playing through it, I was waiting for something else to pop up or something to catch me, something that didn't feel, I don't want to keep using the word copy and paste, but yeah, something that didn't feel like it's just from something else. I wanted something original. And it's not like the game as a whole has to be original, but you'd think those parts could come together into something grander or more interesting than this. I'll check out the game as it gets further along and close to release, but I suppose this is just how I'm feeling about it right now. If you have any thoughts on that, do let me know. I'd love to discuss these things and try and build into some sort of dialogue, I guess. If you happen to give the demo a try and you have any thoughts, do let me know. If you like this video at all or want to support me, subscribing would really help me out. Thanks.